First off, hi. I know who monitors social media there. This makes it 10 times more awkward to film this because I know who's going to be the first to see this. They know me. It's weird. I'm sorry. Hi. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And before we get into this, I want to make it very clear that this is just a story time video. It's a lot more serious than my other ones, but this is a story. So it's from my perspective. I'm giving you my personal experience with the Container Store, and I am not making any claims whatsoever. From August 2016 to June 2018, so almost 2 years, I worked at the Container Store corporate office. And just this morning, I opened up my bin, and here's my employee handbook, proof that I worked there, and then I have the directory. I'm not gonna open this up for you guys because it shows people's names and faces, and that just doesn't seem right. It was kind of sad though, because I still saved some catalogs and right here, and this is not an advertisement for them, but obviously I wanted to love the Container Store. They call themselves a family. I wanted to be part of the family. And I remember I had just turned 23. It was my first job out of college, and I was super excited. Fortune had this annual list of the 100 best companies to work for, and the Container Store was on that list. It was low down, like pretty low. It was like, I think it was in the 90s on the list, like the bottom 10, but it was still on the list, and I couldn't help it. Like I was thinking, oh, that's, you know, I work for the Container Store. It felt like bragging rights. And if you know me, you know that I get super excited about any new type of business venture. So I would show up and I had feedback and ideas. And at one point I even volunteered to come there on my days off to be an unpaid intern. After working there 23 months, I couldn't handle it. I quit. And I did quit. I have the paperwork there too, if there's questions about that. I remember I was an entirely different person. High anxiety, depression, I had no self-esteem. Like, oh my gosh. Sorry, my heart is breaking for my past self because of how much of a mess I was. I'm sorry, I'm trying to calm down because this is too early in the video to get emotional, but seriously, I just remember how damaged I felt, and it took me probably about 2 years to get over it. This year, I decided to check in with the Container Store. Basically, I'm bored in quarantine. I wanted to snoop. But I looked it up, and this is what I find on Glassdoor. And I don't have to say it, like, you can just read it. It's from multiple employees, and they don't feel safe, and they don't feel supported by the CEO's decision-making during the pandemic. And then the murder of George Floyd happened, and the Container Store stayed completely silent. They finally did speak up a week after, an entire week after Blackout Tuesday, and their post was very generic, no action plan, no donations, and then eventually they went back to posting as normal. I mean, I'm not surprised. I don't work there. I don't know, but I can only speculate why it took an entire week for them to speak up. Because, you know, an entire week is probably a good amount of time to watch other companies speak up, analyze the public reaction, and then make a decision if it's a smart business move. I don't know. I don't work there, but I can tell you my story. And if you know, the Container Store loves to talk about its employee-first culture. When I did work there, people would ask me, what's it like to work at the Container Store? Or what's the Container Store work environment like? And I honestly remember just like fake smiling and then telling them something real vague. I worked part-time as a customer contact coordinator in the Customer Solutions Department, often referred to as CSD. CSD was located in headquarters, and my job was to do customer service, sales, and closet design from a call center. I was a really good employee. Who doesn't say that? But this is more than just personal opinion, because I know that the Container Store has it in their records. They tracked me virtually in the system. I had updates. It showed I respected company time. I offered ideas, like I said, and they actually trained me on all of the platforms, which was a big deal. Technically, like there was no extra pay, but it was a big deal because they chose who they trained, and I got trained on all 5. Not to mention, I was underpaid, making $14 an hour. TCS loves to brag about how they pay above industry standards, but that would have been $17.50. And again, this was not just customer service. I was trained, audited, and tracked in sales. In order to be a closet designer, you had weeks on top of weeks of training before you could design by yourself. It was a very big deal. And I want you to picture this, because when I was in full bloom there, I was a live chat closet designer where I took on 2 chats at once, designing 2 different spaces at once. Like I literally had 2 monitors, and I was constantly flipping between the chat system, the design tool, the emails, if they sent in measurements that way. And it's live chat. You're having to respond as fast as a robot. So I had to have great communication, memory, multitasking. It was really stressful. And then when I had helped one customer and they X'd out, another new one would pop up, and I'd have to still, for hours on end, balance 2 different conversations. So yes, I did love the stress. I think I operate well under pressure, but still, imagine that, hours on end for $14 an hour. The job listing on LinkedIn specifically mentions that it is full-time or part-time. But really, you have no choice. You have to start out as part-time. You do not have access to full medical coverage on day 1. They did pay their full-time agents $17 an hour, but they had to offer you full-time. And I did get offered it. I said no for various reasons, but I did ask them, like, how does that work though if there is a great employee who is a mother or a student that can't offer full-time? Will they someday be able to make that $17 an hour, to kind of make it fair? They flat out told me no, which at least they were honest about. They said that the extra pay was to be seen as an incentive to make people want to sign up for full time. But again, the company had to offer the employee full time. It wasn't the other way around. It kind of just felt unfair. This is not just a Container Store issue. This is a corporate America issue, and I'm tired of it. It needs to change. Entry-level positions are always underpaid, and it undermines and devalues the employee who just wants to make enough money to survive. But let's get back to the Container Store, because I have some advice. Unsolicited advice. If you want to keep calling yourself an employee-first workplace, maybe pay your employees a living wage. Offer them medical coverage on day 1 and really make them feel included. When I first onboarded, I was never informed of any timeline. It wasn't like they said, hey, you're gonna start out 3 months part-time, then you'll move on to full-time with full benefits. Yay, like I could look forward to that mentally and plan. No, like I just had to wait until they decided that I deserved to be treated like a human. I knew somebody who came in after me who made $12 an hour. I have no idea if that was the new pay rate or if it was punishment because that person couldn't afford college. I don't know. That wasn't my department. I'm not making any claims here. But I have always been curious about this because the Container Store had one big, gigantic, fat rule. You cannot disclose your salary to anyone in the workplace. And if you did, you were subject to immediate termination. Do they just not know this? Am I gonna be the one that has to tell them that it is 2020 and it doesn't make them look very ethical? And I'm not claiming at all that there is unequal pay within the company, but this rule does make it the perfect cover-up. I stand behind salary transparency. The Container Store is in the process of hiring back some of its furloughed workers that lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And that's great, like I love to hear that, awesome, but there's always a but with them. An anonymous employee came forth to me to tell me that they must sign an arbitration agreement and that gives up their rights to file any class action lawsuits? Why? I would love some transparency here. Why? Because I know SMU is making their students sign a waiver, but they explained it, they were open about it, it was on the news. I'm not really hearing anything from the Container Store as to why or what it means or the fine print. And I kind of want to know. And maybe this is very normal across all the US companies right now, but just because it's normal doesn't really make it not icky. What would happen if a former employee felt too uncomfortable to sign those papers? Would they not get their job back? I think there's a lot of people making some hard decisions here, and I think we would all love those answers. I am not a lawyer, so I'm not going to explore the legality or the ethics on this. I just simply want to know why. It really looks like the Container Store is taking advantage of desperate people during this time. They just want to feed their family. Plus, weren't those workers once considered TCS family? Now, I told you guys that I worked at the corporate office, and that is because their call center and their distribution center were all physically connected to corporate. We could all enter the building through the same front door, eat at the same cafeteria. Headquarters was just one big building. The CSD leaders were very honest, very harsh, but honest with us agents, telling us that corporate never felt like CSD or the distribution center was real corporate. You know, we are physically connected, but we definitely were not the same. Corporate was corporate, you know, and we were just down here. And when corporate did have job openings, they very rarely looked at CSD and warehouse workers. They were gonna look externally. When you enter the warehouse, you see diversity. When you walk into CSD, you also see diversity. When you walk into corporate, like, oh, real big fancy corporate with the high paying jobs, it's all white people. And they can't really deny it because the Container Store is not going to evolve and diversify anytime soon. And there's some reasons behind this, so I'm just gonna shift over to get comfortable, get some visuals on screen, help you picture it. The world of retail is not doing too hot, and the Container Store has struggled again and again to make profit margins. Their stock is so low, and they have suffered with this and debt for so long prior to 2020. So now they are scrambling. A lot of members of corporate have been grandfathered in to these unrealistically high salaries that they're not gonna budge. They're not going to retire and create another job opening. And also because the Container Store has no money, there's also not a lot of new job openings. So if the company had just practiced diversity from the very beginning, this wouldn't be a problem. So with that knowledge, I think it's kind of easier to understand why you're not going to see their executive board be all colors of the rainbow anytime soon. But you know, there's other ways to show diversity and inclusion. Do you remember a few years back, the Container Store broadcasted these TV commercials that was based off the slogan, "Where Space Came From"? And of course, we featured all white families. And I was monitoring social media during that time. And I remember we would sometimes have some of our Black customers speak out on social media about the lack of diversity. I was told just to ignore those comments because they are not our customer base. Who is they? Just kidding. You know who they is. Let me be the first one to tell you that there was no confusion in the workplace. CSD leaders would tell us time and time again about our customer demographics, and it was always white person this, white household that, they make this amount of money. I understand how business works. The CSD leaders were just relaying information that the marketing department told them. And the marketing department got that information from research. But I also don't remember in my 23 months working there some type of company-wide email announcing some type of action plan to address racism or microaggressions or to talk about diversity and inclusivity. Sorry, I said that weird. Nothing. And maybe I'm wrong. Please feel free to speak up in the comments if I am wrong. I might be wrong, but I just personally have no memory of that. I worked there 23 months. That's enough time to have conversations, to sit down in meetings and have people talk at you, and to formulate an opinion. So my opinion, no claims, just an opinion, but from what I gathered, it seemed like a lot of CSD leaders believed that Black people were not our demographic because Black people could not afford the high price points. I want to be really clear to the Container Store right now. Having clean, organized, and comfortable spaces is for everyone. I think the reason is because the Container Store never made an effort to make Black people feel comfortable shopping with them. And why would they? Like, just Google the Container Store and you'll see all team photos of just all white people. Or just go to the company's website or look at their commercials or other media. It's all white people. It always is. Pretty much all white people. I was there when the Container Store decided to invest in influencer marketing, and I don't remember us partnering with any other type of influencer but a white one. And this is why I don't believe there was any compassion behind their post about George Floyd. And a part of me can't help but think that they chose silence because they didn't want to upset their white customer base. But really, like, I don't know. I wasn't there in those meetings. I'm not in their heads. I don't know their heart. So it's not like I want to jump to any conclusions. I like to think there's still a lot of kind-hearted people at the top. I'm not gonna comment further on that because I'm white. It's not for me to really judge, but I definitely needed to point out what I saw and how I feel. I personally felt discriminated against because of my sex and age. I know that's confusing because the majority of workers at the Container Store are white, but speaking from the CSD perspective, the department that I was in, the system rewarded women who hated on other women. I'm getting my laptop out because I wrote this down word for word as soon as I found out. But my first woman supervisor beautifully described me as a girl who craved attention from guys in order to feel good about myself. And then let me just tell you what I observed when it came to different ages in the workplace. Older people could be on their phone, no questions asked. Sometimes they'd be texting, sometimes they'd be placing phone calls, like no problem. They could choose when to take their breaks and how long that it could be for. And in between calls, they would read books and magazines. However, I noticed that I, and also other coworkers my age, were heavily micromanaged. We were also given a hard time if we had our phone out on our desk, just like everybody else. There were a few times when I finished my work and I followed suit. You know, I brought a book to read, and I was immediately stopped by a CSD leader and was told that I needed to review the website, reread the internet for the 1000th time, the employee handbook, and that would make me a good employee for any future promotions. What promotion? Please tell me, what was this promotion? Just as a reminder, I was a good employee. Like, I know that I was really good with company time because they physically could track that. And I remember in one of my updates, my supervisor told me that I had the best record for being the most useful with company time or something. Well, the Container Store actually made a hashtag called I work at TCS to promote people to take pictures while at work and post about it to brag about how great their workplace was. So I decided to take a selfie in the break room. And again, like, I know this was just 3 minutes. I'm a good selfie taker. I had to get an entire lecture because of that. And on top of that, my supervisor told me that the CSD director considered it a strike in her mind, and now she didn't feel comfortable recommending me to another department. Oh, what? But hey, they told me from the very beginning, CSD people don't leave CSD. I know so far filming this video, I've kind of been a bit sassy and sarcastic because honestly, this is the best way for me to tell the story. That's just a story time from my perspective, no claims, but to tell you the story without getting emotional on camera. But I want to make it extremely clear here of some of the things that I had to deal with. I remember there was a married man that wouldn't leave me alone. They appointed a guy to be my supervisor who wanted to hook up with me. And then I remember one day I show up to work and there's a new hire in my cubicle. And that was them giving me the message in person that I was removed and replaced from social media. And it was the biggest slap in the face that nobody could give me a heads up beforehand. And there I was, awestruck, having to awkwardly grab my things and search for a new cubicle to sit at. And there was none. You know, we were over capacity. So I'm just wandering around in circles and holding back tears. It was a huge slap in the face. It was literally so embarrassing. I'll never forget that they did that to me. I did write out my entire timeline of like my personal story, and it was 16 pages long. And don't get me wrong, my pain, my humiliation, they're all fun and amusing stories, but way too long for this video. Maybe next video. Just kidding. I am way too busy trying to get guys' attention to make me feel good about myself. I did condense my story to a 2-page letter that I emailed over to the CEO. But before that, I arranged a one-on-one meeting with the CSD director. I started crying before we even sat down to talk. It was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing, I probably cried even more because of that, you know, and it was the first time that I was just laying it all out there, telling my truth. It was an extremely vulnerable moment to talk with somebody who contributed to my abuse. I told her everything, and she didn't believe me. And that one-on-one meeting really meant a lot. And it was just the most hurtful thing to not be believed. This is the dorkiest pose, but I need a second because this is not a crying video. So yes, the CSD director heard my entire well-documented timeline and acted as if she didn't believe me. But you know what? I believed myself. I knew my feelings were valid. I saw other great workers get torn down and made fun of right in front of me. Our beloved trainers mysteriously disappeared. My beloved supervisor quit. And then another beloved supervisor stepped down. Some good news, when I did quit the Container Store, I did not cry in front of people. So, improvement. I did, however, cry on the whole car ride home, but that's not the point. I didn't cry in front of people. I was really good. And I came home and I received some generic lame text from the CSD director wishing me the best. I did not respond. And then the long weekend passed and the CEO got to her email inbox and read my letter. And then all of a sudden, the CSD director sends me this follow-up text that I find very vague and creepy. Just tells me that the CSD director knew I was telling the truth, but she thought it would be a better idea to downplay my feelings, keep me quiet. It was a power move. But now to have Melissa, the CEO, involved, that did not look good. That CSD director was in some hot water. If only she knew some customer service techniques to de-escalate that one-on-one meeting. A little fun fact, my last supervisor at the Container Store actually met up with me in person months after I had quit. So what I'm about to tell you is pretty much just reiterating what he told me. So after the CEO read my letter, there was this huge internal investigation. It wasn't about fixing any problems. It was about having the documents ready in case I decided to take legal action. All of that now explains why I had to get that text. The CSD director was trying to get some intel, but just if you're watching this, do you think I am that dumb that I am going to engage with you? Oh, I'm really insulted. My last supervisor told me that he had to go through some intensive interrogation, hours of meetings. He had to spend a whole lot of time collecting all of these documents from my updates, and then nothing else happened. I was really hoping that my letter would bring forth some change to the workplace. I felt like the CSD director was not a good fit since she continuously would promote and hire people who were honestly too emotionally immature to lead others. I truly felt like the CSD manager was malicious, you know, how she talked about people, what she purposely chose to do to hurt others. It was really gross. They both kept their jobs, and I would understand, except for I am not their first or second or fifth complaint. It's 2020, and the Container Store, I think, is still hurting a lot of good employees, but pretending like they don't see it. The CSD manager ended up getting laid off because of the pandemic, and honestly, it's kind of sad that it took a pandemic to get rid of her. I will never forgive and forget. I can't. I can move on. And I hope that she moves on to a new job because she doesn't deserve to financially struggle. But I hope she's not in charge of anybody else. And again, as a reminder, what I told you about the Container Store, doing an investigation and then moving on from that, that's not an assumption. I am just telling you what I was told by a CSD supervisor. One more thing, and then I promise you I am done. Thank you for sticking with me, but this is actually really important because it has to do with safety. I cannot claim that the CSD layout has several code violations. And I know one of my colleagues had saw the floor plan early on, and she let them know, like, that's not gonna work. And she did some research and she listed out what codes it was breaking and turned it in, and they threw out the report and told her that the city of Coppell approved of the floor plan. I am not accusing the Container Store of lying about that. I bet the city of Coppell did approve it, but I don't know if they should have approved it. And again, I am just going to tell you how I feel and give you a visual. Here is the CSD floor plan. Right here is where I worked. Woo woo, there I was until I got moved by the new hire. In the middle, what you see, that is a plinth, which is like a small stage, elevated, where point people, supervisors, anyone of leadership can sit down and observe their minions. My first example is when a phone agent passed out. They called 911, the paramedics came with a stretcher, and because the aisles were too small and the corners were too tight, they couldn't get the stretcher to the phone agent. And then I felt really bad because the phone agent woke up and was obviously scared and then started crawling to the paramedics in front of everybody. And nobody wants to come to work to be embarrassed like that. I felt really bad. The phone agent should not be embarrassed, but again, it was a scene. After that, the floor plan did not change. And for my second example, let's go back to my visual. So let's pretend that a fire got started right here. This would mean these employees, right here and here and here, would have to run to this closest exit. But in order to do so, they would have an obstacle course. Oh, so fun. Because you would have to jump on your desk, jump over a cubicle wall, land on another desk, and then head toward the exit. And you'd have to watch out because our computers were on these huge, bulky stands so you can make a standing desk. And it was huge. I can't imagine how crummy it feels to be put there and have that be your fire exit strategy. A fire may never happen in CSD, and I pray it never does, because that's not a real fire exit plan. So I believe. I do not claim. That's it. I am done. I'm officially done. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate just anyone who watched this whole thing to listen to me. And I am not about cancel culture. I really hope that the Container Store takes time to listen to its employees and customers and to really create an action plan for change, because I don't want to see them run into the ground. I know there are a lot of great people that still work there. And of course, this can be a conversation. So if you have something you want to add, the comments are open for you down below. And if you were an employee there and you just want to talk or vent, I totally understand. You can private message me on social media, and then we'll just keep that between us. And if you were somebody who got laid off by the Container Store and you need help with your resume, I am actually a copy editor, and so I will help you out, of course, like free of charge. Like, let's just get together, talk to me on LinkedIn, and we'll get something worked out and get you set up for the future. If you want to show your support, it can all be in the little things. Just give this video a like and subscribe if you just want to join my Bam Bam. Thanks again for watching. I love you. I mean it. Bye, guys.